They tell you love is the cure, that if you give without end, if you stay soft, the world will protect you. They promise respect. They promise return. But the world doesn't move that way. Love without walls is not safety. It is exposure. It leaves you open, waiting for the cut. A man who builds his life only on love will be broken by it. Not because love is evil, but because love is blind, and the world is not. Where love begins, calculation often ends. You forgive too soon. You trust too deeply. You explain away the wound. You assume, if I would never hurt them, they would never hurt me. That is the first mistake, the dangerous one, the one that makes you predictable. And predictability, in this world, is the quickest path to loss. Part 1. The hidden risk. Enemies are easy. They watch from a distance. They measure you. They wait for a chance, but they never stop fearing your silence. They know one wrong move can bring your strike. That fear keeps them careful. But those close to you, they are different. They grow comfortable. They see your softness. They see the access you grant. They stop fearing the cost of crossing you. And when fear leaves a relationship, so does respect. At first, it looks harmless. Family, friends, lovers. You tell them everything. You give without counting. You explain away their mistakes. You forgive before they've even asked. You convince yourself it is love. But what you call love becomes expectation in their eyes. Over time, expectation hardens into entitlement, and entitlement always demands more. That is the hidden risk. Not betrayal from an enemy. Betrayal from the familiar. Not the knife you see coming. The one that slides in because you believed it never would. The danger is not outside. It is beside you, sitting at your table sharing your secrets. They don't plan to use you, but they will. Because softness without limit invites it. Because loyalty without cost cheapens itself. Because access without walls is irresistible. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He did not reject love. He rejected blindness. He knew even those closest to you could betray when it suited them, especially if they believed you would never strike back. So he built a rule: contain love, not erase it. Contain it. Love with a ceiling. Love with a cost. Love with a plan. Because love without a frame isn't safety. It is exposure. To be cold-blooded, then, is not to be cruel. It is to be aware. Aware of how people shift when they feel too close. Aware of what you surrender when you become too transparent. Aware of how unguarded love slowly turns into someone else's tool. The man who leads with feeling loses leverage. The man who guards his center keeps it. This is the quiet law of power. And it begins not with enemies, but with the ones you let inside. Part 2. The 5 tests. Test 1. Entitlement. At first, they thank you. They ask. They recognize the weight of your effort. But as time passes, gratitude fades. They stop noticing. They stop asking. They start assuming. Your presence becomes a given. Your loyalty becomes a background hum, invisible until it's gone. And when you finally pull back, they don't pause in reflection. They accuse. They call you selfish. They call you cold. Not because you changed, but because their advantage slipped away. That's the sound you hear in their anger. The grief of losing an unearned gift. Entitlement is not love. It is comfort dressed as love. It grows only when you've given too long without cost. And the more predictable your loyalty, the faster it turns into their right, not your choice. Test 2. Guilt. You set a line, they step over it, you pull back. And then comes the maneuver. They remind you of the past. They say, after all I've done. They let the tears fall. They turn your no into cruelty, your defense into betrayal. If guilt makes you fold, you never had a boundary at all. Because guilt is the oldest trick. It doesn't argue, it doesn't reason, it bleeds until you bend. And once you bend, they record it. They file it away for the next time. Because they know guilt works. It's not love. It's emotional negotiation, and if they can make you flinch, they can make you surrender. To pass this test is simple. Don't debate, don't plead your side, stand still, because silence under guilt is power. Test 3. Loyalty. You stay steady, you check in, you give more than you take. At first, they respond, but routine makes them lazy. Your loyalty becomes expected. They stop matching it, they stop checking, they stop giving back. They arrive when they need. They vanish when they don't. And when you finally pull back, they panic. Not because they love you, because they lost their insurance. They relied on you the way a man relies on a roof. Always there, always covering, never questioned, until it leaks, until you step away. Machiavelli would warn, predictable loyalty is never appreciated. It is only exploited. The moment they stop earning it, it ceases to hold value. And if you let that continue, you're not loyal, you're trapped. Test 4. Just this once. It always starts small. A favor, a forgiveness, a skipped rule, just this once. But once you bend, you show you can be bent. And from that moment, once never means once. It grows. Can you cover this? Can you cancel that? Can you overlook this mistake? It looks harmless. It feels manageable. But each just this once is a seed, and seeds grow roots. Soon you are the man who always bends, who always shifts his values to keep someone close. That is not love. That is pressure. Strategic, silent, relentless. To resist, you need clarity, not excuses, not half promises. You need to see each request for what it is, a test of whether you value your standard more than their comfort. Test 5. Too harsh. You speak clearly, they call you cold. You pull back, they call you stone. You stop being endlessly patient. Now you are cruel. This is how they flip strength into sin. They don't miss your warmth. They miss access. Access to the version of you who absorbed everything without response. When that version is gone, they don't reflect. They label. Because it's easier to call you heartless than to face their own habits. But clarity isn't cruelty. Distance isn't betrayal. Standards aren't sin. The wise don't flinch when accused. They let the names fall. Because those names are only proof that access has been denied. Remember, the one who fears being called harsh ends up weak. The one who accepts it and stays firm keeps his ground. Part 3. Rules of Power. Rule 1. Never explain distance. Space doesn't need defense. The moment you explain, you hand them leverage. They argue, they plead, they twist. And suddenly, your silence becomes a trial. Your need for space turns into their negotiation table. The wise never explain distance. They act without permission. They don't announce detachment. They live it. They don't tell you why they've pulled back. They let absence do the work. When asked, "Why are you acting different? What happened to us?" You don't open the archive of your feelings. You don't bleed on command. You say one thing, "I've recalibrated," and that is enough. Because explanation dilutes power. But refusal, clean and simple, forces respect. Or it reveals who was never capable of giving it. Rule 2. Set consequences, not conditions. Most beg with conditions. Don't talk to me like that again. If you hurt me, I'll be upset. Please respect me. That's weakness. That's asking for mercy. The wise don't ask. They design consequences. structures that make disrespect costly. They don't say, "Don't cross this line." They show, "When you cross it, I vanish." No warnings, no speeches, just absence. And absence is sharper than anger. Because absence is final. The trap is going back too soon. They panic, and you rush in. Then your consequence collapses. Respect dies. You return only when you decide. Not when they cry, not when they beg. When you decide. That's the frame. Boundaries don't beg, they act. And action, consistent, creates power. Rule 3. Never negotiate through emotion. Tears. Silence. Rage. These are weapons. Not always conscious, but always effective against the untrained. If they know you cry when pressed, they'll press. If they know you chase when ignored, they'll ignore. If they know your fear of loss is stronger than your standard, they'll use it. The wise don't play this game. They strip emotion out of the bargain. They don't beg with pain. They don't plead with tears. They don't explain for hours. Stillness is their stance, unreadable under pressure. No long texts, no frantic calls, no desperate re-entry. Because once emotion runs the negotiation, logic has already left the room, and the one who controls the room is never you. Rule 4. Define tolerance. Never wobble. Most people wobble. One rule for strangers, another for family, one for today, another when tired. That is emotional inflation. And inflation kills value. You need black and white. I don't respond to yelling. If I create distance, it stays until I open it. I don't reward apologies without change. Period. No bending. No soft exceptions. Because the moment you bend, they learn bending is possible. And once it's possible, they'll test again. And again. Machiavelli didn't punish often. But when he did, it was surgical. Cold. Final. That's how power enforces itself, not through volume. Through precision. You don't need to strike constantly. You need to strike once and make it unforgettable. Standards enforced rarely, but without wobble, become law. Rule 5. Don't fear harshness. This is where most fold. They know they're being drained. They feel the peace slipping. But the moment they enforce, they panic at the label. You're cold. You're cruel. You've changed. Society tells you patience is holy. That silence is arrogance. That firmness is sin. But the wise don't fear being called cold. They fear being called easy. Let them name you harsh. Let them rewrite your story. That is their comfort talking, not your truth. Reputation is smoke. Reality is stone. If you surrender reality to protect smoke, you lose both. You're not harsh. You're uncompromising. And uncompromising men don't bleed out on command. Love without walls is sacrifice. Sacrifice without recognition is slavery. Better to be accused of cruelty than to be quietly consumed. Part 4. The cold frame. Cold-blooded doesn't mean cruel. It means awake. Awake to the shifts that happen when people feel too close. Awake to what you surrender when you hand over every truth. Awake to how unguarded love drifts into entitlement. Most think warmth wins. They believe giving endlessly proves strength. But unchecked warmth doesn't inspire loyalty. It breeds comfort. And comfort without cost always hardens into expectation. The moment love becomes unconditional, pain does too. That is why the man who leads with feeling loses leverage. Because feeling blinds calculation. Because calculation is the only thing the world respects. The frame is this: keep your heart, but guard its access. Keep your warmth, but offer it by choice, not default. Keep love alive, but build the gate that tests who earns it. Shift your dialogue. Not, why did they hurt me? But what did this teach me about them? Not why did they leave, but what did I learn about what they value? Pain becomes a message about who belongs and who never did. The cold man doesn't cry over loss. He records it. He files it. He adjusts access accordingly. He doesn't spiral. He doesn't beg. He observes. That's the cold frame. It turns hurt into intelligence. It turns betrayal into a map. It turns distance into power. Slow reactions are the edge. People fear anger. They fear shouting. But they fear something more. Indifference. When you explode, you are predictable. When you collapse, you are predictable. But when you withdraw in silence, when you cut access with no speech, when you stand still and watch, that is when fear rises. Because silence is harder to read than rage. And the unreadable man is the dangerous one. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't act from impulse. He acted from advantage. He waited. He measured. He struck when time made the strike fatal. Power isn't having the strongest feeling. It's having the sharpest timing. The cold frame means never rushing, never sprinting to fix, never chasing the withdrawal of another. It means letting silence expand until it reveals truth. And truth always comes out in silence. Who calls? Who accuses? Who vanishes? Who waits? Silence sorts them better than speeches ever will. The cold man doesn't lack love. He lacks chaos. He doesn't lack care. He lacks reactivity. He doesn't lack a heart. He just keeps it armored. This is not numbness. It's clarity. It's not cruelty. It's structure. Because in the end, the world does not break you through enemies. It breaks you through access, through those you gave too much to, through those you let closest without test. That is why you build the frame. Walls too high breed loneliness. No walls breed disaster. But a frame, a gate, a filter, a cost, that is survival. You still love. You still give. But you give with awareness. You love with condition. Not because you are cruel, because you are valuable. And value unguarded is never safe. Part 5. Strategic empathy. Balance isn't stone. It isn't the absence of feeling. It's the filter that decides when feeling is used. Most people think strength means going numb, cutting everyone off, living without care. But numbness isn't strength. It's retreat. And retreat leaves you small. Strategic empathy is different. You still love. You still give. But only to those who earn it. And only after they re-earn it again. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy without memory is. You can forgive. You can offer another chance. But you never erase why you pulled away in the first place. You can let someone back in. But not without terms. Not without proof. Not without a test. Because the danger isn't in the mercy. It's in forgetting. And forgetting resets the game in their favor. So when you give carefully. You give without erasing the cost. You give without surrendering the standard. Softness offered with structure is power. Softness offered without walls is servitude. Control your presence, not just your distance. Most think pulling away is enough. They cut contact. They vanish. They imagine absence creates power, but presence, when controlled, is sharper. Show up briefly. Speak clearly. Exit while they still feel your weight. You're not the wreck. You're not the argument. You're the quiet reminder. The shift in the room. The one who left with calm, but left them uneasy. That is authority. Authority without noise. Authority without begging. Strategic empathy means knowing kindness must be selective, not automatic, not exhausted. You don't stop being kind. You stop being careless with it. You offer warmth slowly. After observation, after proof. You open the gate, but only with checkpoints, only with conditions, and always with an exit strategy. If they call it transactional, let them. Because unconditional giving is noble only in words. In practice, it becomes a weapon used against your peace. Now your giving aligns with your vision, with your energy, with your health. That's not selfish, that's command. Strategic empathy is not about hardening into stone. It's about becoming a mirror, reflecting people clearly, showing them who they are when they face you, offering warmth only when they meet the standard. And if they call you cold, let them. If they call you changed, let them. Because their discomfort is not your burden. It's their grief at losing the version of you who always bled on command. You are no longer that version, and once that truth settles, they either evolve or they leave. Either outcome strengthens your position. So hold the middle path, not numbness, not chaos, but clarity, strategic empathy, conditional, disciplined, unyielding in its boundaries. You still love, but you love with eyes open. You still give, but you give with limits set in stone. You still forgive, but you never forget. That's the balance, not to become stone, not to stay soft, but to be awake and in control. Part 6. Habits of the cold. Cold-blooded is not an act, it's a rhythm. It's the habits you repeat day after day until no one questions them. Habit 1. Move without announcement. You don't say, "I'm cutting you off." You don't write long posts. You don't turn silence into a speech. You just slow the replies. You stop explaining. You don't re-enter once you've withdrawn. Real boundaries are not words. They are patterns. Consistency writes them deeper than language. Habit 2. Stay polite, never overfamiliar. Warmth is not automatic. It must be earned. You greet with composure. You compliment with weight. You exit before comfort dulls respect. Politeness keeps your edges sharp. Overfamiliarity dulls them. Habit 3. Reflect before reacting. Someone disappoints you. You don't snap. You don't chase. You pause. You catalog. This pause is power. Stillness intimidates more than rage, because rage is predictable. Stillness is not. Habit 4. Never reopen without requalification. If you walked away, it was for a reason. Don't forget it. Don't come back just because time passed. Time doesn't heal betrayal. Standards do. They must re-earn the place they lost. If they haven't grown, you haven't missed anything. Habit 5. Guard your peace in private. You don't parade maturity. You don't sell silence as virtue. You live it, quietly, deeply. Cold-blooded isn't for admiration. It's for defense. You hold peace like a weapon, hidden, sharp. This is the finish line. No speeches, no campaigns, just structure, just ritual. Cold-blooded doesn't mean heartless. It means disciplined. It means the world cannot move you at will. It means your love is earned, not assumed. And when people feel that, the weight of your silence, the cut of your standards, the cost of your presence, they respect what they can no longer touch freely. That is power. Clean, precise, permanent. Closing period. Cold-blooded doesn't mean heartless. It doesn't mean cruel. It means you decide when to turn the heat on, and for who. It means you don't bleed on command. You don't explain your silence. You don't bend your rules to keep the peace. The world will tell you to stay soft, to prove you care by giving endlessly, to forgive before change, to love without walls. But love without walls is not love. It's exposure, and exposure is the beginning of loss. The ones who broke you were never strangers. They were the ones you let closest, the ones who knew your soft spots, the ones who stopped fearing you. So you build the gate, not to keep everyone out, but to see who earns their way in. And once they're in, you make them re-earn it again. That's not paranoia. That's precision. That's how you turn love from weakness into strength. How you keep warmth alive without letting it consume you. You don't need to announce boundaries. You don't need to defend them. You don't need to fear the names they call you. Cold, different, harsh. Let them. Because the man who fears being called harsh ends up weak. But the man who accepts the label and keeps his stance, he stays untouchable. Cold-blooded doesn't mean you lost your heart. It means you learned to guard it. It means you value it enough to let only the worthy touch it. So hold the gate, guard the fire, and never forget, unconditional love breeds unconditional pain. But love with walls, with weight, with cost, that love lasts.